Hello and welcome to this podcast from the BBC World Service. Please let us know what you think and tell other people about us on social media. Podcasts from the BBC World Service are supported by advertising.
A warm welcome to The Conversation, the programme with an all-female perspective. I'm Kim Chakaneta, and each week I bring together two women from different countries who have a shared profession or experience. The coronavirus pandemic has left few parts of the economy unscathed. Restaurants have been particularly hard hit, with many struggling to survive and others shutting down altogether. It's forced chefs to rethink and reinvent their approach. Today on The Conversation, I'm with two award-winning chefs from Slovenia and India who, through sheer creativity and resilience, are finding a way to keep their businesses afloat. Mninda Sandhu is a chef known for her bold flavours and her imaginative reinvention of traditional Indian dishes in Mumbai. Mninda was planning to open a new restaurant, but is instead focusing on a takeaway business she started 3 weeks before lockdown. Anna Roche is a self-trained chef who has transformed her family restaurant, Hisha Franco, into a globally renowned dining destination in Slovenia. In 2020, the restaurant, which is known for its innovative use of local and seasonal ingredients, won 2 Michelin stars. Well, congratulations and welcome to you both.
Well, thank you so much.
Mninda, is there a dish that for you sums up what your cooking is about?
Yeah, actually there is a dish which sums up what cooking is for me, and it's, I call it Diomali. It's bamboo smoked mutton, and it's served with jasmine rice, which is wrapped in alpinia leaf. Diomali is a little tiny village in Arunachal Pradesh where I went for picnics as a child. And my uncle would teach us how to catch fish, and whatever we would catch, he would stuff it into a bamboo and throw it on open fire to cook it. And he was the first person who made me realize that cooking is cool. And that dish has so many, it has nostalgia, it has my childhood food memories. It's like a soul-satisfying dish for me and pretty much sums up who I am as a person and my story.
Okay, I love mutton. That sounds terrific. Anna, what dish sums up what your cooking is about?
You know, it is very difficult to say something because I am one of those souls who always look for something new, something different. You know, I would like to have a capability of keeping something and say, and this is going to be forever. But then after 2 months, I'm already like, can we change this? Because really, like, I cannot look at it anymore. As for my private life, I like very comfortable Mediterranean food. Anna, as a chef, is always researching for something different, new, and she's never happy. While Anna, in her private life, likes the comfort of what she knows.
Well, let's talk about growing up and your earlier food memories. Mninda, you mentioned your uncle and cooking outside with bamboo. Presumably food was a big part of your life when you were growing up. But tell us about that.
You know, I grew up in a small town called Jorhat, Assam, which is in the northeastern part of India. It's pretty remote. So when I was growing up, like my mom couldn't really buy any fancy ingredients, but she always tried to up the game as far as food was concerned. So if she couldn't buy an ingredient, she would grow it in her kitchen garden, then always have people over. And my family would, even now, we just always talk about food. Like at breakfast, we talk about lunch, at lunch talking about dinner, you know. And so it's been a very, very big part of my life.
Anna, did food play a similar role in your family's life? Was it a central part?
No, again, I'm going to be a little bit different. You know, I grew up in a family that was very busy, and my parents were working all the time. But I was also completely into sports. I was almost professional dancer and skier. So I would come home just to have, you know, a bite to eat. I considered the food as a fuel for my body. So my mother made sure that I had enough proteins and enough of the equilibrated food. And so when I actually went to the university after my linguistic high school, my schoolmates are still laughing about when I got 2 Michelin stars. Apparently everybody was watching and they were like, we can't believe she never knew how to cook. I mean, how can it be that this girl is getting 2 stars, really? But because when I was recently in Dubai, I met one of the friends and he was like, but I remember when you were 21 and then, we were eating out of the fridges, all students, but your food combinations were the worst. But the truth is that in my family, we had, I think, amazing tradition of cooking well because my grandmother had very aristocratic roots and my mom had a lot of that. So when I was eating at home, the food was really always good. And I think that is the best DNA you can give to someone. And then you're addicted to good flavors.
Let's talk about that change in direction, because as you said, you were a skier and you were also a multilingualist at university, and I believe you had a career in the diplomatic service ahead of you. What happened? How did you change direction?
Well, it's very, how to say, it looks like a part of very romantic books for young girls when, a girl meets a prince and then a prince saves her life. So I fell in love with a guy and they had a local restaurant and I was just graduating in international science and diplomacy, looking after the first job in Brussels at European Commissions. And then I just became a rebellion and I was like, but why wouldn't I follow my heart more than my head? So I finally decided to stay and jump into a business that I never knew anything about.
What did your parents make of that, this change in, from going to a possible career in the diplomatic service to going a different direction?
Well, they made a tragedy out of that because my mom still, after all these years, is like a kind of ashamed to say that her daughter is cooking or is a chef. While my father is a little bit more accepting. It's, of course, for parents who don't come from a society that has gastronomy tradition, very difficult to accept that their children are doing something that by their maybe idea is not even intellectual enough.
Linda, you were studying science before you made the switch. Can you tell us about the moment when you realized that, I want to be doing this, I want to be cooking?
So, ever since I was from my childhood, my dad always said that you should become a doctor because I have 3 siblings who are very creative but dyslexic and they wouldn't really do very well in exams. And here I was very nerdy growing up and I got good grades and my dad, he had a dream that one of his kids should be a doctor. And I came to Mumbai when I was 17 to study science. But by the time I was in my 3rd year, I realized that this is not what I want to do. And I remember that moment like it happens in the movies. I was in the lab extracting DNA. I had the test tube in my hand. I was looking out of a large window and lightning struck and I discovered my true calling and I said, I will become a chef.
So a dramatic moment, it sounds like.
We had a little hot plate in the hostel and I used to cook very basic things like instant noodles or scrambled eggs. And my roommate would eat that and always say, but when you cook it, it's so different. You should become a chef. But I laughed it out. Like I said, this is not how you become a chef.
Anna, you're self-taught. Have you ever missed not having the formal training? Is it something that you give any thought to at all?
Well, of course, there are moments where you say it would be so much easier if I did my schooling in a right way. But on the other side, it means you don't belong to anyone and any school. You can do mistakes and saying that you want the mistakes to happen. I mean, I'm talking about sometimes doing a mistake in a kitchen, it's actually it brings you to even better results. And especially in the countryside as ours, it gives you space to discover and space to be curious.
Linda, do you think you could have cut it without having gone to catering college?
I think so, because a lot of my learning happened much after the culinary school and it was on the job and it was when I traveled and I met people in villages and, started gathering recipes and trying them out myself and learning from people, because Indian cuisine isn't documented well and people like to keep secrets. And there are a lot of recipes which belong to the royal families, which are like closely guarded secrets. And the only way to learn is by exploring on your own. But at that point, I didn't know better. At least the culinary school showed me the way.
Right. Anna, you moved from waiting tables to the kitchen. How difficult was it for you when you were starting out and learning to cook on the job?
Well, it can't be more difficult, honestly, because we never closed down the restaurant. One simple day I said, listen, one of us needs to take over the kitchen because that's the heart of the place. And you need to start from the heart if you want to build a big story or to build a story at all. So since Walter was completely into the wine and cheese story, and he is actually a cook by profession.
And so I should say Walter's your husband.
Exactly. And I was like, okay, I'll take over. And this is how it all started.
So how many other people were working with you?
I believe there were moments we were 2, 3, but for a restaurant that could sit down maybe, 60 to 80 clients at once. Yeah, there were like peak seasons like June, July, August, that of course we needed to take as many people in because the season were very slow. And I think like we were brutal. And still, I had 2 children at that time, one after the other, and without a babysitter at the beginning at all. And we need to survive financially because the area where we live in is very difficult. Like we had one earthquake after the other, then we had like a strong investment, then the general financial crisis started. It all went wrong, if you want. There wasn't really a bright moment.
Oh, sounds like a baptism by fire, Anna. Oh. Linda, you started off in a large kitchen, and you often hear a lot of horror stories about these spaces, the loud and macho. What was it like for you when you started out?
I remember like my training was so difficult. I mean, if someone gave me $1 million now, I would still turn that deal down, It was that tough. There were more bad days than good. I was constantly bullied. I was made to feel worthless. But I still showed up, every single day to face that struggle.
Linda, who was making you feel worthless? Who was bullying you?
The cooks in the kitchen. Because when I started out, it's still very male-dominated, but those days it was like I was the only female chef. There's never a need to be mean, but they were just like unnecessarily mean.
Well, we'll come back to this question of, kitchen atmospheres in a bit. But I just want to move on and talk about your style. You're both known for and have won awards for your distinctive style of cooking. Anna, how would you say you developed your style?
Well, I developed my style by being completely self-taught. It means that my style has nothing to do with the style with anyone else. It's very unique. It's very different. And I have a huge respect for the local surrounding and environment where we source from, and our ingredients have never been globalized. And with that, it means that they remain somehow very different in flavor, which defines our food really a lot.
And Linda, how did you come into your style?
It happened over the years organically. I did a food promotion with the granddaughter of Maharaja Bhupender Singh of Patiala, and she shared her family heirloom recipes with me, which were never shared with anybody. And
she's royalty. Could you just explain who she is?
Her name is Nikki Singh, and she's the granddaughter of Maharaja Bhupender Singh of Patiala, which is a royal family. And her father would cook every evening. There would be Sufi music playing, and it was like an open house, and hundreds of people would come and eat at the place. And when her grandfather traveled, he traveled with an entourage of 180 people, and with him would travel the pots and pans because it was so important. The utensil that you cook in makes such a big difference in the final dish. She would talk me through the recipe. At the end of it, always say, but if this was cooked on open fire, on wood or charcoal in a heavy bottom copper lagan, which is a utensil that is used extensively in Indian cooking, she said, this dish would taste absolutely different. And that just clicked something within me, and it reinforced what I believed in, that, I take immense pride in traditional Indian cooking. And I decided that, when I do my next restaurant, I will not use gas and I will cook only on open fire. And so 4 years ago, I started this restaurant called Earth, where there was no gas in the kitchen and everything was cooked on open fire.
And is it easy to cook on open fire? I know a lot of people do, but in a restaurant setting, how does it work?
It's not easy at all. I mean, the kitchen is not meant for the faint-hearted. It's hotter than usual, and there are a lot of things which, like when I was setting up the kitchen, I never imagined how I would fry onions, because we use a lot of fried onions in our recipes, and then frying onions on open fire was just next to impossible to control the heat. And so it was all, I mean, I had to design my own equipment, and I just seen a little angiti in my mom's backyard, and I blew it up to an industrial size to be able to run a busy lunch and dinner service, and created a sand pit to cook meats under hot sand overnight. And it was challenging, but it was a very, very gratifying experience. And I mean, it was creative awakening for me, and I feel I found my rhythm in cooking with that restaurant.
I'm with two award-winning chefs, Amninda Sandhu from India and Anna Roche from Slovenia, and we're talking about their roots into their kitchen, the experiences coming up, and how they are adapting to restrictions because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Amninda, you spoke about being bullied by some of the men you've worked with. So how important is it for you to employ women in your kitchens?
It's very, very important, because if I don't do it, I can't expect someone else to do it for me, right? I have to start somewhere. And I'm setting up a brand right now where another kitchen in Pune, which is closer to Mumbai, and I want to have a all-female team in there. And I make a conscious effort to hire female chefs.
Anna, what is the situation, when your restaurant is, operating at full capacity? What is sort of the balance of gender in your kitchen?
So in Hisha Franco, in this moment, we are more or less half and half, which for European standards is really, really high in behalf of women. But honestly, we are also trying to keep it gender balanced, because we believe it creates the best working environments for everyone. Because I'm building a team that is not with me only like half a year or a year. It's a team who needs to stay together longer. It's a team who needs to live together, because we live in such a countryside where actually nothing is around. After work, there is not even a place to, have a drink, have a beer, or hang out together a little bit with other people. We really depend a lot one on each other. And I find my philosophy good, but I never count really. So it's a kind of a mystical thing that it always comes out in the right way.
Well, Anna, last year Slovenia won its first ever Michelin stars, and your restaurant was awarded too. How important was that to you?
We didn't know what to expect, because Slovenia is a very contradiction country where, if the whole world says something is amazing about your country, and then Slovenia says, is it really? So I always had a kind of a feeling that the whole world is applauding my work. But then Slovenia is saying, but is she really something special? I'm not saying they don't love me, but there is so much contradiction.
Anna, sorry, when you say contradictions, how do people react? How do locals react to your food? When you say contradictions, what do you mean by that?
Well, we live in a country where people don't know fine dining. We are farmers, basically. What kind of food does the farmer need? He needs a food to eat, to feed himself. He can have amazing ingredients, but he's not interested into doing a fine art out of that, because he needs to eat, because he was working the whole day. So the 2 stars directly from scratch don't happen really often, especially to a woman. It has been a beautiful, magical moment, but the day after, we were all at 8 o'clock in the morning in the kitchen.
But I believe there was a celebration involving tattoos. Is that correct, Anna?
We had, what was fun? I had so many interviews that day that I actually escaped the press conference with the Slovenian president and the Minister of the Economic Development. I just escaped because I said, if this happens, we will all tattoo ourselves, and we did.
One last question about the tattoo. What tattoo did you end up getting?
I got 2 at once, and it hurt as hell. I actually got my sentence from my book, which says that after every rain, the sun comes out. So whenever I'm sad, I look at it. And then everybody else was putting on the 2 Michelin stars. And I was like, but I shouldn't, as a chef, be the one without. So the last moment decision was that on my 2 fingers, I put the 2 stars. That they look like flowers, or even they look like as though I was burnt. So a lot of times people are like, oh, did you burn yourself? I was like, no, it's my 2 Michelin stars. But it's nothing wrong if they look like a burn. So.
And Linda, at the start of 2020, you were on the verge of setting up a new restaurant, and then the COVID pandemic started. How did that impact your plans?
It derailed my plans, and I still haven't been able to start a restaurant, and I don't think it's the right time. I would have to anyways wait it out another year to see how things are. Now I think I look at things differently, because earlier it was only about having a restaurant and winning the awards, but now it's about what else can you do with food, and take each day as it comes and adapt quickly, study patterns, adapt quickly, see what's selling, and hustle to keep a business afloat and be able to pay your team and not lay off anybody and all of that. So being a chef has a whole new meaning for me now.
And when you say a whole new meaning, it is just about you have to constantly be rethinking how you deal with what's coming at you.
So takeaways have such a big role to play now that I'm starting 2 more brands of takeaways, also ready to eat, like premixes in a jar, a lot of things which are related to food, but not your brick and mortar restaurant, Anything related to food, I'm open to doing it because it's whatever works.
Anna, given that your restaurant is in quite a remote location, what impact have the restrictions on travel and the lockdowns, what impact have they had on you?
Well, we live in an area which is surrounded by borders, and the moment the Slovenia started closing down the borders, we were like in a corner, because we depend on the open flow of people. And the first lockdown has been really brutal because, for instance, we live 3 kilometers from Italian border and 40 kilometers from Austrian, and they were all like blinded. Like they put stones on the road, so you couldn't even. I mean, it really looks like a First World War. Even opening a restaurant in these kind of conditions looks kind of crazy. Then we finally reopened the restaurant in the first days of June, and we really had amazing reservations and a big support of the region, because Americans, Australians, New Zealand or Canada was not traveling at all. But then finally, with the end of July, Slovenia already started closing borders with Greece, with Croatia, with Belgium. That costed us like 25 tables in one day. And you know how much money that is, and I have to pay my team. These overnight decisions that really made us suffer a lot, and you cannot remake it in one day because we have no big city around us. We live on a pure countryside of no one. There are goats and cows. I mean, the biggest town around has 800 people. So you depend on the free movement of people, especially with Europe. And it's not really the easiest. There is no government in Europe in this moment that can guarantee a survival of the restaurant business, unfortunately.
Yeah. And Anna, how do you manage the pressure of being responsible for your team and keeping things afloat? That must be an enormous pressure on you.
So I have a very optimistic character, and I always believe I can make it. And with the first and second lockdown, we started a project that I share directly with my team, also the profits and everything, where we tried to help farmers using the industry and using our knowledge about the food to create amazing recipes, and all the revenue out of that, not negotiating ever with farmers about the price. So I am capable of making them be creative, work, but also financially support them to be able to have a decent life, which I believe so hard working people need to. So this is at least a satisfaction that I say I never let anyone down, because that is, I believe, the worst. The second level is, of course, helping myself, because I'm a control freak, as every chef is. And it's very difficult to say, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. My God, I have to step in front of my team and give them work, give them orders, explain them what's going to happen with them. And also myself, I usually planned my life for a year and two advance. My schedule was booked out with my assistant probably for 2 years. No joke. Like in 2 years, you could ask me in 1.5 years, can you cook a dinner? And I was like, let's check the date. Or maybe or a month later. And it's nice to work in this kind of organized structure, because you know exactly what you're working for, and you know exactly why you say yes for a particular thing, because you know you're building a particular story. And I believe, like, to fight down this personal part, which is really, it really affected me personally a lot, is of course my sports and my rules. So I do my hour of run per day, and if I can, I do also yoga, or I do yoga separately. Like in a day I can't run when it's raining or something, but I try take myself that hour. That helps. Plus I'm writing my second book, which I'm famous for writing my books myself directly in English. No ghostwriters, no translators. It's a kind of a psychoanalysis, that is really helpful. And believe me, in 1 year you lose so much physical condition, how to work, so much creativity, that it really hurts. Maybe, I won't be capable to create again. Nobody knows what happens with a person who cannot work after a year.
Anna and Amninda, thank you both very much.
Well, thank you. Bye. All the best.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I've been talking to the chefs Anna Roche and Amninda Sandhu. Thanks for listening to The Conversation. I'm Kim Chakanetsa, and I'm back again next week.
I'm Dessa, the host of Deeply Human, where we traipse into the uncharted darkness of our skulls to find out why we do the things we do.
Why do you fall for him or her?
Being a scientist, well, very, very cautious about what we say that we know for sure, because it's tough to prove stuff.
Honesty is a really good thing, and most people acknowledge it and they want to be honest, but we have lots of other motivation that play out.
Deeply Human, a BBC World Service and American Public Media co-production with iHeartMedia. Just search for Deeply Human.